Hi everybody, my name is Karen and I'm an alcoholic, and I've been given this opportunity today to give you a little bit of information about who I am, what my alcoholism was like for me, and I think more importantly what my recovery has been like since I got sober. My sober date is November 15th, 2007. And my recovery has been informed totally by the 12-step fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm very blessed and very grateful that I've had nearly 13 years of continuous sobriety. So a little bit of biographical information about me, just so some of it you might relate to, some of it you might say, oh, that lady's story is a bit different from mine, but I'm 62 years of age. Been married for 38 years. I have one daughter who will be 27 soon. Retired healthcare professional, and never ever thought I would be sitting in front of a camera and telling you about being an alcoholic. Don't remember growing up as a child thinking one day I'm going to be an alcoholic and then I'll be in recovery. So my drinking story is not very glamorous. It's certainly not very eventful per se. I started drinking mostly and more consistently in my adult years. I was working full-time. I was starting to feel I was entitled to have some wine when I got home at night. And over the years, between the ages of 40 and 50, I just started drinking more of it. I liked the taste of wine. I liked the fact I could afford it. I consider myself a lady drinker. And I started looking forward every night to coming home and just having that 1 or 2 glasses of wine. And somewhere along in that story, I went from feeling I was entitled to it and feeling that I would like to have it to crossing over from the proverbial cucumber to the pickle and realizing that I needed to drink every day. I recognized that my drinking was different than other people in my family or my friends. I started to recognize that when drinking daily, I would wake up in the morning and start to realize that I drank the night before until I puked, till I passed out, till I blacked out. And I started to realize that every morning I would say, I'm not going to do that again. And every night I would have a couple of empty bottles of wine on the counter, and more often than not would have regrets and shame and remorse about what I had said, what I had done. And I think more importantly, I was so angry at myself and so disappointed in myself that I couldn't seem to find a way to not drink every day to excess. So at the age of 50, having had 10 years of alcoholic drinking and having tried a lot of things, I certainly took the intellectual approach to trying to drink like a lady. I tried harm reduction, I tried psychological treatment, I tried anti-abuse, I tried experimental drugs to reduce cravings. I tried to tell myself and my family I wouldn't do it anymore. I tried changing what I was drinking and when I was drinking. But in the end, it always came down to, once that first drink went in my mouth, I could never predict the outcome, except that I was going to be remorseful about it the next day. So at the tender age of 50, I took the last step that I could think of doing, and that was to go into rehab. And I was fortunate that access to rehab and payment for rehab was available for me. And I went to Homewood, which is in Guelph, Ontario, and signed up, I guess, if you want, for 30 days. It was while I was in Homewood that I was introduced to the 12-Step Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was not happy about, number one, having to share a room with somebody. Number two, having to have direct one-on-one counseling. But most importantly, I was not happy about the fact that I was being made, as part of my program, being made to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't like you, but being the good little people pleaser I was, I really wanted you guys to like me. And so I went about my first few weeks in Alcoholics Anonymous with the best little doobie I could be. I went to meetings every day. I did what I was told. I really needed you to like me. I needed to be seen that I understood and could do everything that was being asked of me. But one of the biggest problems I had when I left rehab, and certainly in the early months of my recovery, was that I had this big alcoholic voice on my shoulder here saying, "Oh, Karen, you're a high-bottom drunk. You went into recovery and into the rooms way too early. You have a lot of time left that you could drink. Look at all the things you didn't lose yet." And I couldn't figure out if I'd had a bottom. I knew I had run out of things that I could think of to do to continue drinking like a lady, but I didn't know whether I had a bottom yet. And I'm just going to tell you the story of what I now identify as my bottom, because I actually identified that nearly 4 months after I left rehab and nearly 4 months after being in the program. And I was thinking back on a relapse prevention class we had had while I was in rehab, and I was thinking to the time I was asked to consider something, anything that I could play to the end that might stop me from picking up that first drink, perhaps making a phone call to another person in AA, perhaps contacting the sponsor that I didn't yet have at 4 months. And I realized that when I was in this relapse class, that I had been hitting smack up in my face with the realization, the horrifying realization, there wasn't a single thing that I could think of. Not my husband, not my daughter, my family, the law, my license to practice. There wasn't a single thing that I was ever going to put ahead of my drinking. I was always going to pick alcohol before everybody and anything else. And that was horrifying for me. I remember being up in the auditorium at Homewood, just sobbing with great snot coming down my face, thinking, oh my God, it's going to always be alcohol ahead of everybody else if I don't change something. So when I recognized that as my bottom, things got a little bit easier for me. I stopped listening to my alcoholic on my shoulder saying, you can go back out, you've got this, you've got a couple more months, if not years of drinking before you really have to surrender. So what did I do in the early years of staying sober? I'm going to talk about a theme that I recognize now, both in the early days of when I first got sober and even now, what I've done in the intervening nearly 13 years, and more importantly, what I'm doing right now today in the midst of what we're going through in the world, which is the COVID crisis. So the most important thing that I recognized early on is this concept and this intention of quiet and stillness. So what does that mean, quiet and stillness? I'm going to now talk about stuff that worked for me. This is my story and this is what I used. So I'm going to share how I thought about it and what I did, and perhaps some of you might get something out of this. So I had to look at quiet and stillness in my schedule. I had to realize that I was a people pleaser, that I was always organizing, that I was always planning, that I was the social secretary for everybody and everything, that I would always say yes if you asked me. And I did these things, somewhat because I was a nice person and I wanted to be helpful. But I really realized that a lot of what I was doing was around people pleasing and me thinking, well, if I did this for you, you would like me. And part of it was also, I'm going to do these things. I'm really good at it. I'm the best organizer, and I like to be in control. So I had to start looking at the way I scheduled my life, and I had to start saying stuff like, I'm going to get back to you about that because I don't know whether it's something that I can do. I had to start saying stuff like, give me 20 minutes. I'm going to finish what I'm doing now, and then we'll talk. So I had to learn to defer and be comfortable in saying, I'll get back to you at a later date. I had to look at my environment. I had to turn off the television and the radio. I had to learn to be quiet in my environment. Then and now, I never have any noise on in my car. I don't have radio or TV on in my house. I don't have it as background noise is what I mean. I am very particularly right now as to when I go on news sites and what I listen to. We don't have newspapers in our house. I don't read about stuff. I'm not ill-informed. I'm not uneducated, and I'm not putting my head in a hole in the ground, ignoring what's going on around me. But I've realized for myself that I need to have distance and have perspective on what's going on in the world, and I need to allow myself to have some quiet so I can pay attention to what's important. I used to think all that stuff was important. I used to think being on my phone, social media, listening to the radio, being up on news channels was really important. I had to know this stuff, and I had to react to it right away in order to be thought of as someone who was in the know, and that's not important to me now. And in fact, that is a distraction and a degree of noise that I don't want to have in my life anymore. I've had to learn quiet and stillness in how I use my words and how I respond to people. I would hear something, I would see something, I would react right away, the mouth would open and out would come an opinion, a judgment, something that wasn't always supportive or helpful. I really, really had to understand this concept of does it have to be said? Does it have to be said now? And does it have to be said by you right now? And that was a very hard thing for me to understand. But this quiet and stillness that I bring to my intention around what I'm saying is really important for me. I think it speaks to where I am in my program. I think it speaks to my level of serenity. And it also speaks to my ability to step away from a situation and be thoughtful and mindful that other people are in the world and it isn't all about me, in my opinion. So keeping it simple, keeping what's going on around me quiet and simple is really important. I've brought this. Deborah Gattenby is on the camera. This saved my life when I first got sober. And what it is a little crochet craft. And what I'm making is a kitchen cloth. And I use this specifically as an intention and a trigger for my head and my heart, that when I had the crochet hook in my hand and I was sitting quietly, I was giving myself permission to sit quietly with my thoughts and my emotions, to sit in the moment, to sit with my feet on the ground, and to allow me to be in that moment. This went everywhere with me, to every solitary meeting, and has continued to this day. This is what it's like. I picked this up and it's, okay, we're being quiet now. This is meditation for me. This is a way for me to express to myself and even to other people around me that I'm in the moment. I'm here. So one of the ways that's been important to me is to have this for myself, and I also like to encourage my sponsees to have something quiet they can do in their hand. I think it's You know, we can be triggered in so many ways in a negative way that if we've got something that immediately allows us to breathe out and to refocus, something like this is really important. It could be a little book on daily reflections or just for today. It could be a little bit of needlepoint. It could be a little Sudoku book. Anything that when you pick it up and you take it with you everywhere you go, it's this strong signal and strong permission that, okay, I'm allowed to sit quietly now and I'm allowed to breathe through what's going on. So that's something that's been really helpful for me to work on quiet and stillness. I got my little cue card here so I remember everything I want to say to you. I think for me, the other part that's been important in terms of my recovery early and in the intervening years and now is that I really understood that I needed to stay in the middle of AA. I was told early on that it was really important to stay with the winners. And winners in the AA sense is not the way we think it. It's not winners as in you get a prize, that you get accolades, that you get some recognition that is, for and about your ego or for and about people looking at you and clapping their hands. For me, being with the winners means that I wanted to be with other women that were sober, had worked the steps, and could understand, and just as importantly, understand and call me, particularly an alcoholic like me, call me on stuff that I might not have recognized, that I might not see that I'm doing, that might harken back to old patterns of behavior and action that I don't want to be part of anymore. So that's very important to me. When we go out from rehab, when we go out in the world, we have a lot of distractions. I had a lot of distractions. The famous persons, places, and things, and I know for myself, and I know having been in the rooms for a number of years and had the gift of sponsoring a lot of women in the program, that these distractions through person, place, and thing are really, really important, not only to understand, but also for us to realize that we do need to step back and step away from those things. So get yourself a sponsor. I'm not a good example. I was, 8 months before I got my first sponsor. I had moved from Canada down to Delaware. I didn't have a sponsor, and I finally got a woman that I chose. I should say I did have somebody up in Canada about 5 months after I first got sober, but we sort of got squished together. This woman that I met down in Delaware, I heard her say something that I liked, and she became my sponsor. So I'm going to just spend the last few minutes talking about where things haven't worked out. I think it's important sometimes that we were honest and open about the progress, not perfection part. So in the nearly 13 years I've been in the program, I have struggled. I have not, thank goodness, had to pick up a drink and had a relapse by drinking again or picking up a drug or something else that's intoxicating. I have, however, had many, many emotional relapses. I have struck a family member in anger. I have smashed a phone in anger. I have driven up the rear end of somebody's car in the fast lane, cursed them, honked them, and flashed my lights at them. I have had 7 speeding tickets, including when I was going to do my first, 4th, and 5th step. I was speeding to my sponsor's house. I got caught. And I think the thing that hurt me or told me so much about how I can't always rely on myself and I need other people in my life to give me feedback is just about 3 years ago, I wrote to my spouse a letter saying how important he was to my recovery, how much I appreciated him being in my life, that I was so excited about with him starting retirement that we were going to enter into this new part of our life, and how blessed I was to feel that he was going to be my partner in this next part of our relationship and our marriage. He gave me back a letter about a day later, and in the letter expressed to me his extreme unhappiness about our relationship, about my behavior, about my words and actions, and that he didn't see a future with our marriage the way things were. To be on the receiving end of a letter like that after 10 years of sobriety and 34 years of marriage, to realize that I had completely and utterly misread our marriage and our communication, to be completely blind and in denial to how I had been acting, what I had been saying, was extremely difficult. We did what you're supposed to do in that situation. We agreed that we would go for counseling, which we did, and we started practicing better communication. But I don't think I've ever been so blindsided in my life, because I had no insight into what I had been doing and what I'd been saying. And so I'm very open about this. I've shared this as a speaker at meetings. I've shared this with my sponsor and my sponsees. It's simply a reminder to me that even 10 years into my recovery, I can find myself in a situation where I don't know the answers. I don't recognize the impact I'm having with my words and my actions on my loved ones, that I need help, that I need to accept help, and I need to be humble in my understanding that this disease of alcoholism, while symptomatic through my drinking, is in fact expressed through my actions and my thinking. So, you know, I'm so blessed that I have the program. I'm so happy that you women are being given a chance to enter into recovery. It's one day at a time. I remember, like, I would go around and be, why do I have to fill the dog bowl? Why do I have to make supper? Why am I being asked to do these things? I would have unhappiness around these things and feel that I'm being put upon. My life now has evolved into gratitude. That was a good cup of coffee. I'm glad I can sit here and watch the birds. Can't talk enough about how, as when we flip the script to gratitude and humility, how important it is. So I hope you find the quiet and stillness that is important to you. I hope you find your peeps in your rooms, your 12-step fellowship. I'm so proud of the fact that you've made this big decision in your life and you've entered into a program of recovery. I wish you a great 24. And don't forget to find something that's going to help you with your focus and your stillness. So thanks very much.